The quality of the paintwork is pretty good, but you should not expect miracles like other cars. The body eventually acquires all sorts of scratches and chips. Over the years, seals in doorways can rub paint down to metal. It is recommended to protect problem areas with vinyl film in order to protect yourself from additional costs in the future. As for the corrosion resistance of body iron, despite family ties with Volkswagen, there is no double galvanization here. As a result, after 5-6 years of operation, saffron milk mushrooms begin to appear on the body. Rust appears most quickly on the edges of doors, seals, and the joints of body panels, at the point of contact of lockers and bumpers with the body. Also, do not leave open metal selections, chips, for a long time. The chrome plate interior trim parts are also quite vulnerable. Attention may also be required by aluminum brackets for rear view mirrors. They oxidize over time, which is why they lose their mobility and can break with excessive force. The trunk lid, equipped with the twin door system, is not famous for its reliability. During operation, problems can be caused by its lock loosely closes the door, fails, and a closer with sensors, buggy, electrician, but due to which the light in the trunk may not turn on or go out. Elimination any of the breakdowns is quite expensive, so many owners turn to Colibans for help, who instead of replacing failed elements install separate ones, interfering with the wiring. It is worth noting that such repairs can lead to fatal electronics failures. To avoid breakdowns, mechanics advise use only the lift-back mode. They can also fail the tailgate lock switch and the contacts of the license plate light oxidize. The protective plastic of the front optic also received a lot of complaints. It quickly scratches and becomes cloudy, so it is strongly recommended to protect them with armored film. Versions with adaptive optics have often problems with adaptive mechanisms. In case of breakdown, it will be cheaper to repair than to buy a new one. The interior of the Škoda Superb II, as befits a business sedan, is endowed with a pleasant design and high-quality finishing materials that emphasize the status of the car. For cars whose seats are made of combined leather, Alcantara inserts are present in the center, scuffs appear on the cushion after 150,000 kilometers of run. You can criticize the soundproofing of the cabin, which does not quite correspond to the class of the car. Over time, the acoustic comfort is disturbed by the rear shelf, door seals, the feeling of the deflector and the plastic frame of the climate control panel, creaking, knocking. But the electronics are not as seamless as the salon. The weakest point here is considered to be connectors, oxidize, and wiring, which has a rather poor quality insulation, which is why it often breaks. So, for example, if the wiring in the front doors is damaged, power windows and side airbags often stop working. Violation of the wiring located under the dashboard can cause malfunctions in the ECU control unit and the machine will stop working. Also, the appearance of a garland on the instrument panel or the failure of a particular system may be caused by a malfunction of one of the power supply units or buses that depend on each other. In this case, the problem may be in place that at first glance is beyond suspicion. It is worth noting that the Škoda Superb II is endowed with a complex power system. Therefore, to eliminate any breakdowns with an electrician, it is better to contact a good specialist, since intervention in the system by inexperienced hands can lead to high costs in the future. If we talk about the reliability of electrical equipment, then here we can only note frequent failures in the Bolero multimedia system. Both axles use independent suspension with anti-roll bars, McPherson strut front, multi-link rear. In good condition, the suspension of the car provides an acceptable ride and good directional stability at high speeds. As for the reliability of the chassis, it is well adapted to our operating conditions. The chassis is considered especially hardy for versions with a package for bad roads. Of the weak points of the front suspension, the rear silent blocks of the front levers can be noted, which often need to be replaced at a range of 70–90,000 kilometers. The stabilizer struts serve about the same amount. CV joints under moderate loads nurse 100–120,000 kilometers. Closer to 150,000 kilometers, the front silent blocks of the levers become unusable and the supports of the front struts sag. The remaining elements are able to last 150–100,000 kilometers. In the rear suspension of the Škoda Superb II, in addition to bushings and stabilizer struts, shock absorbers bumpers serve less than 100,000 km. The rubber elements of the rear brake-up levers become unusable at a range of 120–150,000 km. The rest of the rear axle consumables and shock absorbers can withstand up to 200,000 km. Over time, from the effects of chemicals, which we generously sprinkle on roads in winter, the bolts for attaching the cage of the rear silent blocks firmly stick to the aluminum subframe. A similar nuisance is observed with the fastening of the rear brake-up levers. The steering system uses a rack and pinion mechanism with an electric booster. This node is quite reliable, but the electrical wiring connectors installed on it can turn sour over the years. Tie rod ends run 120,000 kilometers, rods withstand 150 to 100,000 kilometers. There are no significant complaints about the brake system of the car. The only thing that can fail here is the ABS control unit and dust shield fasteners. It often breaks. 4 petrol units are provided for this model: 1.4 TSI 125 horsepower, 1.8 TSI 158 horsepower, 2.0 TSI 200 horsepower, 3.6 V6 FSI 260 horsepower, and 3 diesel engines: 1.6 TDI 105 horsepower, 1.9 TDI 105 horsepower, 2.0 TDI 140 and 170 horsepower. Škoda Superb II with the weakest unit 1.4 TSI EA111 is not a frequent guest in the CIS market, as it was officially delivered to us only in the first year of the model's release. The problem areas of this engine is a defective tensioner and a weak timing chain, which may need to be replaced after 50,000 kilometers. When the first symptoms appear, crackling, diesel, metallic greening when starting a cold engine, you should immediately contact the service, since jumping the chain by at least one tooth will lead to a fatal meeting of valves with pistons. To extend the life of the tensioner and chain, you need to use the original oil and change it in a timely manner, and also try not to put the car on a sloping gear. There are problems with the reliability of the pistons and oil scraper rings. The latter can begin to collapse without having served even 100,000 kilometers. The disease is manifested by increased oil consumption. As a rule, piston problems are caused by poor quality fuel, which causes destructive detonation. Also, when using Bajaj gasoline, they will be asked to replace the high-pressure fuel pump and nozzles quite early. Another common disadvantage of this engine is the unreliability of the variable valve timing system. A characteristic diesel noise appeared and the engine starts to work unstably. Repairs will cost $3,500. In addition, we can note the short service life of the liners: pump, air conditioning compressor, turbocharger, 100–150,000 kilometers, and the tendency to coke the oil receiver and valves. The most common Škoda Superb II engine are 1.8 and 2.0 liters. Both units belong to the EA888 series and have identical problems. The main ailment is the unreliability of the timing chain, which in most cases needs to be replaced at a range of 120–150,000 kilometers. If nothing is done, then the risk of chain jumping with subsequent bending of the valves increases. For cars with the 1.8 BZB engine manufactured before 2010, the chain could jump after a long stop on a slow facing up. The jump occurred during startup. Also common is oil burn caused by wear and poor design of the piston rings, very thin and have 2 small drainage holes. The problem appears after 50,000 kilometers of run and progresses with its increase. By 100,000 run, oil consumption can exceed 150–300 grams per 1,000 kilometers of distance traveled. The oil separator can also cause increased oil consumption. When replacing, it is better to give preference to parts with catalog number 06H103495AD or 06H103495AC. It is worth noting that the presence of an oil burner accelerates the process of coking of the piston group, rings, valves, and the wear of spark plugs. In addition, in these engines, failure of the high-pressure fuel pump were noted. If it malfunctions, the engine suddenly stalls and does not start, and problems with the pump, it flows, the noise of operation increases. Erratic idling is most commonly caused by poor throttle body condition, needs cleaning, and poor fuel rail condition. If traces of oil appear on the engine, then the reason, as a rule, is in the crankcase ventilation system. It is rather weak here. If the disease is not eliminated over time, traces of oil will appear on the intake pipes and the upper timing cover, and then the rear crankshaft oil seal will begin to squeeze out. Despite the above ailments, these motors are able to last 250–300,000 kilometers. However, subject to adequate maintenance, oil and filter changes every 5–7,000 kilometers. The 3.6 atmospheric engine EA390 boasts a higher level of reliability, which compares favorably with modern turbocharged engines. Despite this, it is difficult to call it problem-free. As with previous units, the piston of this engine is prone to coking with all the ensuing consequences: increased oil consumption, unstable idling, etc. Also, the disadvantages include the unreliability of the timing and the capriciousness of the fuel equipment, injectors sensitive to fuel quality, problems with starting in winter, high-pressure fuel pump flows. Complementing the picture is not a very successful intake system, short-lived ignition coils with the thermostat, and glitches in the engine electronics. Despite all sorts of problems, the engine can last about 300–400,000 kilometers without significant breakdowns, however, subject to proper maintenance and the use of high-quality gasoline. Diesel engines. Engines running on heavy fuel not only have better dynamic performance and efficiency than gasoline units, but also surpass them in reliability. It should be noted right away that the Škoda Superb II with diesel engines was intended for the European market and was not officially delivered to us. The most successful among diesel engines are considered to be 2.0 engines of the EA189 series after 2010 of release and a 1.6-liter unit created on its basis. Among the shortcomings here, one can note the unreliability of the hexagon of the oil pump, which needs to be replaced closer to 200,000 kilometers. If you do not follow it, the oil pressure in the engine will drop with all the ensuing negative consequences. At the same run, the swirl flaps in the intake manifold may require attention. Due to severe contamination, they wedge. There are frequent problems with the cooling system and temperature sensor. About once every 100,000 km, the intake manifold with EGR needs to be cleaned. When using low-quality diesel fuel, you should not count on a large resource of nozzles and injection pumps. Due to the unsatisfactory condition of the nozzles and candles, the engine may start poorly and stall. With high quality and regular maintenance, the resource of these units will exceed 300,000–400,000 kilometers. Engines with a volume of 1.9 and 2.0 liters until 2010 belong to the EA188 series. These engines wear out the pump injector seats quite quickly, which leads to fuel getting into the oil and starting difficulties. In cases of untimely maintenance, camshaft cams can also cause problems, the failure of which often leads to the replacement of the camshaft along with hydraulic lifters. As with more recent units, the hexagon in the oil pump drive is not famous for its reliability, the edges wear out. After 200,000 kilometers, a variable geometry turbine requires attention, wedges, as a result, direction deteriorates. In our realities, injection pumps, nozzles, a particulate filter and an EGR valve are not famous for their reliability. The resource of the units is 400,000+ kilometers. Paired with motors, 3 types of gearboxes were installed: 5 and 6-speed mechanics, automatic transmission, as well as 6 and 7-speed DSG robot. Manual transmission were generally reliable and do not cause any special problems with careful operation. However, those who like to drive at traffic lights quickly give up the dual-mass flywheel, differential, and clutch kit. The reliability of the automatic transmission ASIN TF60-SN09G is also not bad, although it is rarely found on our market. It was installed with a 1.8 gasoline engine. The main disadvantage of this gearbox is an unsuccessful heat exchanger. It quickly becomes clogged with dirt. It is worth noting that when operating a car with a contaminated heat exchanger, the gearbox resource is greatly reduced. Along service intervals of the automatic machine, the process of oil contamination of the solenoids and the friction lining of the torque converter is accelerated, which operates in an unusual busy mode. Depending on the quality of service, it serves 100–150,000 kilometers. The mechanical part of the automatic transmission is quite strong, but it painfully tolerates excessive oil pollution. Dirt quickly disables the pump, the rear cover sleeves, and the K3 drum. The weak points here also include the sound gear bushings and washers of the satellites of the front planetary gear. Much more trouble can be delivered by DSG robotic gearboxes. The 7-speed robot DSG7 DQ200 with 2 dry clutches is considered the most problematic. This transmission is especially unreliable on cars of the first years of production. The most common nuisance is the rapid wear of the clutch. Depending on the operating conditions, it serves 50–100,000 kilometers. Symptoms are kicks, jerks, vibration, and loss of direction during acceleration. Clutch replacement costs $400–500. Closer to 150,000 kilometers, the electro-hydraulic control unit, mechatronic, needs to be replaced. If the condition of the mechatronics is unsatisfactory, jerks appear when switching and oil leaks, and some gears may also disappear. There are also complaints about the mechanical part of the transmission. The shaft bearings, the seats of the engagement rods, and the valve body solenoids wear out quickly. The 6 reverse fork is also considered quite vulnerable, in the event of a malfunction of which the reverse and 2 fork gears disappear and the box itself goes into emergency operation. In order to slightly extend the life of the manual transmission, it is recommended not only to regularly change the lubricant in it, but also to periodically clean the mechatronics. The 6-speed robot DSG6 DQ250, unlike the 7-speed one, uses a wet-type double clutch. The friction part of the mechanism is in an oil bath, so that the clutch life does not raise questions. The mechatronics also began to serve longer, but in the event of a breakdown, you will have to fork out a tidy sum. Buying a new flywheel costs more than a contract box. At long service intervals, every 40,000 kilometers or more, where products will quickly kill the valve body solenoids, the recommended interval for replacement the working fluid is every 15–30,000 kilometers. Another problem is the presence of jerks and vibrations, which are sometimes difficult to get rid of. Most often the trouble is caused by wear of the double clutch, malfunctions of the speed sensors, and the presence of chips in the box. As for breakdowns in the mechanical part, the problems here are the same as those of the 7th step. Škoda Superb II is an inexpensive but at the same time comfortable, large, roomy, well-made and well-equipped car. According to these indicators, it is one of the best among competitors, although it is cheaper than most of them. But its reliability cannot be called impeccable due to some components and assemblies, gasoline engines, a robotic gearbox, and an electrician often fail. If you are the owner of this car model, please describe the problems that you had to face during the operation of the car. Perhaps it is your review that will help readers of our site when choosing a car.